Good morning. This is Mark, Plant Medicine Path. Today I'm really fortunate to have a friend of ours and Michelle's, Mark Howard. He's got an awesome facility down in San, Todos Santos, Baja California, right in Mexico, Mark?
Yep,
Iboga Soul. And he's
yep.
also was the producer of a really cool documentary. I don't know if a lot of you have seen it. It was called DOSED. Really cool, really informative, really deep of how beautiful this medicine can be. Why don't you tell us a little bit about you, Mark, and what brought you to this medicine?
So I think that like since I was very young, I've always had uh, a bewilderment for life, and like a lot of people were just into the mystery and just like wow, eyes wide open, and I don't know, it doesn't always add up and seem right. There's always a lot of different avenues that life takes you, and sometimes through extreme versions of like love and feeling happy and fantastic to like to letdowns and all the different combinations that roll through life from when you're a kid. So you know hey Robin, I had a pretty good upbringing, you know but definitely a lot of turbulence. I grew up in a city in Canada. um, Lots of really like steel factories and rough natured
Right,
individuals, big hearted but rough natured. Do you know what I mean?
right,
Like back
yeah,
in the day, they had the days of the iron, the wooden ships and the iron men. It's
right,
similar. You're coming out of like where I guess my ancestors would have been coming across from Europe, and mixing with first First Nations and the French, and then you have like the Irish and the Germans. My grandmother had 19 brothers and 19 kids in her family from my great grandmother.
that's pretty
And
amazing.
one,
That's all right. That's a big family. Yeah,
it's huge. Like I went and
yeah,
actually researched. I went to the house and visited in Nova Scotia, Shelburne, Nova Scotia. She met my grandfather there in World War II. He was pushing a bunch of Navy guys down the in a shopping cart. They were late for the boat, so they asked if they could stay at the hotel she was working at. Um, and seven of my family members, my dad included, work almost over 40 years each at Stelco Steel, and I spent a summer there. In between I had a funny upbringing through schools. I would get in trouble, and then I would do well, and then I get in trouble. But they say, "Well, we keep him in. He's kind of smart." So eventually, with some really good people and influences, I
yeah.
managed to get out of high school in 7 years, but I got accepted to university, so I went to University of McMaster in Canada, and I took humanities because that's basically like I didn't when I finally did good in getting out of high school, I I mostly did in English and arts and geography and such, but I had one biology, so I went to university, and then I did a year and a half of philosophy, which again, like, I think it's like a lot of people, you expand and then you find out where you are, and then and then
Right.
you maybe expand again, and so I got kind of bored with that and didn't really see that where that was going, so I left and I drove out across Canada to out west to go snowboarding in Whistler, British Columbia. I
Right.
expanded into that, but that's kind of a different expansion. There's a lot of freedom, and you get to explore the wild side a
Explore,
little more.
explore, right.
Uh,
Yeah,
but again, then you're not. I wasn't quite fulfilling like what I'm going to do in the longer term goals. And eventually, I went back to. Well, actually, I crashed my snowboard pretty bad, so I broke my ankle really bad. So
right,
I decided to go back to school, and I took all my prerequisites for science, and then because I was in university already, I started taking all my electives as science, and I basically spent 2 years. I did 2 years of general science and got accepted into the science program at McMaster, which is extremely hilarious because it's kind of something that not too many people do, but it was extremely hard. I had to take calculus, which I failed. I had to take it twice. It's the only class I ever failed, but I challenged myself with, I wanted to know why what, E equals MC squared means. Like, why is there an equal sign, and what is each side? I wanted to know more about science, the word scienze, which means to know in Latin. Like, more about, like, I was very on the artistic side and the poetic side, but what was this like secret language of the sciences that sort of was kind of that I didn't understand, and how was I being held back by not understanding what that meant, and why were people elevated into the system or society more because they knew this stuff, like, like, how is it in law that people can understand things, or just I wanted to know more. Like, I knew that we're all human and we're all, spirituals. I had this great sense of expansive spirituality, and I wasn't really vibing with so much. I grew up hardcore Catholic, but then I moved to a small town that was right by one of the biggest reservations in Canada, and got a glimpse of First Nation spirituality, and that was like sparked me up. Like, whoa, this is a very different story in contrast to
Two
what I've been brought up.
dynamic, different stories, right? Two totally separate, dynamic stories, actually.
Blown out of the water. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
and it was instant. It resonated with me a lot. But I still went with my grandmother, who was president of the Catholic Women's Leagues, both my grandma and grandfather, for like 14 years.
Right.
I'd go deliver flowers with her on Easter, Christmas, to 94-year-old women. All the people who couldn't get out, to deliver flowers, raise money for the church, the penny sales. My grandfather, he ran the big raffles and stuff in the hall, and all these charity raising things, So there's still this like huge sense of generosity and goodwill towards people,
Right.
just filled with a lot of alcohol and, like a lot of belief systems that I wasn't never really sort of like really resonated with, like sitting on my knees in the church. I'm not saying it's wrong, just saying it's the truth with me. And I resonated more with some of, I spent time with elders on the First Nations, like, because they were my friends' parents.
Yep.
I seen things were completely out of context of what I'd learned. The way they did funerals. My friend's mother died, and staying up for a week with the body in the house, drumming and singing all night long and praying, and sending that person off to the other side. Was really different, and going and seeing the longhouses, and I think that learning about the Creator, and and Rising Sun was my friend's father's name, and it's crazy. I was working in the smoke shacks. I don't really ever tell these stories, but I was working in the smoke shacks there overnight, security, believe it or not, with a gun. Like, it's crazy. Like, as if I was going to shoot it. But anyways, he would come in the mornings and tell me stories of his people, and just about, he told me stuff like they used to fly on rocks and things like this. And then just hearing stuff like that, I'm like, whoa, this is none of this has been taught to us, and about the Creator.
Culture. Right.
Well, there's more there that, like, okay, look, if stuff's not matching up in a completely, heartfelt way, and what you're seeing in society and the world you live in, it doesn't necessarily mean you should be shunned, or you're wrong, or persecuted, or like, you've committed a sin and you should go to the confession box right away. You know what I mean?
Right.
Genocide's okay. Just look the other way. Like, like there's, I mean, this divide began to, like, come into my real life. There's a lot of bullying. I went through a lot of bullying growing up. I was a bully at times. I could just switch back. I'm not going to play either side, because I know how that went. I grew up in some tough ass streets, and then going to a small town, and then going right into a new culture. Like, someone held me up my first day of high school. A native held me right up on the wall and said, heard you called us a bunch of effing bungies. You got to walk through the hallway between all these giant First Nation guys, and I'm this white kid, and they want to label me with calling them a bunch of effing this. And I'm like, no, that never happened, but it doesn't really matter.
You're starting to explain yourself at such a young age. You're having to explain yourself. Stuff that never happened.
It never really was about what I did or didn't say. It was more about just all this crazy, everybody's got all these belief systems, and there's a lot of like, there's a divide back then, but the lands and
I think there's a divide now too, right? I mean, there's an absolute divide now. We all believe in different systems, different beliefs.
Oh yeah, there's a divide. There's a divide, and there's dividends and divisions that are cross-secting through our entire everywhere, right? And then so a lot of it, I think, involves mandating or it's this control of history, his story, like what's the real narrative? Like, like, was there no ancient civilizations before the last ice age? Which, obviously, if you look at the planet, like, I mean, you just go, well, what? Like, people who just invented the wheel all of a sudden just threw up a bunch of big giant pyramids that are
Right.
irreplicable to this day.
But you can almost make your brain hurt, though. Sometimes you can make your brain almost hurt by thinking so much. So that took you to the point of you got out of your schooling, you got out of your education. So what got you kind of to this whole
Well, like,
medicine? What kind of got you
well,
onto this?
I got into the education. Like, I dove right into it, and then,
Mhm.
when I got accepted to the Faculty of Science, and then I realized, well, I'm facing a bachelor's to a master's to a PhD in what? I was like, well, what am I going to actually do then? I left again, and then I went back out again, and started working again in the snow fields, and I just kind of carried on. I had a real, like, I would call it addictions for sure, but I mean, I don't really necessarily like that word. I had an affinity for um, escape. Like, even sometimes just being happy. Like, alcohol was a very natural. It was almost like breathing air. It just was in my upbringing everywhere, right?
Right.
But I for sure 100% used it to escape. If there's a problem, drink. If we're going out, drink. We're gonna do this, drink. Want to feel better in a social event, drink. So, but it sneaks up because it's so pervasive in our society. Then drugs comes in. Things like cocaine, and I never was into. I never did downers, which is a heroin sort of thing like that. Luckily, I mean, but anyways, these things became pervaded in my life, and the glory and the glamour, like when you're younger, it runs out once you start getting your 30s, or I mean, for me, anyways, and then I was about 37 and I got a girl pregnant, and that's basically where it changed for me. Where
Yeah.
there was all that goodness that I, have in me from since the beginning, and then but battling this kind of like endless darkness with no real future sort of situation. And then I realized, well, I'm going to bring a kid into this world. I don't really want him to go through the same.
Right.
And I went to some programs like AA sort of situation, but wasn't really resonating. And I was about 3 months from the birth of my first child, and someone told me about something called Ibogaine, and I was like, "Whoa, or Iboga. It's a plant that can help you with, like, realizing your true purpose." And I was and he heard from someone at a garage sale, and I said, "Okay." I went home and started researching. And as soon as I started researching, it led me to the jungles of Africa. And I pictured, like, going and talking to these Africans who held this ancient knowledge of truth through the use of this plant medicine that comes from the earth.
Right.
And I was like, I got to do this. And then I borrowed the money and flew to Costa Rica 2 months before my child was born, and did Iboga with a shaman there. And that 15 minutes into that, I realized that there was a force here that loves me,
Yeah.
loves humanity, and loves the earth, and that the truth is going to be the thing that sets you free. And then but I went through a lot of hard lessons, and that was like the glamour of the truth. It's like the shiny flicker of a fishing lure when you're in the ocean. You're being
Yeah.
caught by God, but the fight begins after you bite that shiny lure.
Absolutely. I mean, everything you say so much resonates with so much of like my story and what we do and how we think. Because addiction to me is not in my vocabulary either. Because I think all these are labels. I mean, addictions are what we do to cover up our feelings, but all these things can be cured. AA never resonated with me either. All kinds of taught cultures that I mean, all this is all this is lineage, all this is traumas, all this is something that is more than this. And you nailed it. You nailed it. Once you do this medicine and you see there's something different, there's this love that's bigger than us. That's what brings you to keep, at least for me, this is what continues for me to, I want to share this with others. I mean, I think this, and for what you do, because I've never done a boga. I've sat with almost every, I've sat with every medicine except a boga. And there's something special that I hear about this medicine, how it just can take you back and bring you back. So, explain how that works, Mark. Explain how you were able to see the beauty in this, because there's some beauty in this medicine. It's powerful.
So in my story, I mean, to explain this right now. You hear the sirens in your life, and often, that's going to, it means emergency, like something's going on, like something's going on, and that's kind of like a lot of people wait to hear the sirens before they go to try to, recapture the love that they are, and, dissolve the illusions and the blockages that get in between them and their soul being love. Like if you think of how many like ancestors we have, I think I looked back 300 years or something, like 5,000 or 6,000 different sets of grandparents and great grandparents that you have just in the last 300 years.
Right.
6,000 people or something. I mean, the number 5, 4, something, a lot. All of these pure spirits or spirits and people come into life, and some are, I'm sure, good and some are bad, but all of it, if you look at the thread of truth right in it all, like there's an aspect of love, and that's what I want to look at now. And that aspect of love, like when you come into this world, and then what distracts you away from that love? Do you know what I mean? So addictions are, in a sense, if you want to talk about it, there's something that whenever you're doing something that's out of your control, that's taking you out of love, you're not making a good decision for yourself. You're more of addicted to bad choices, right? Why are you making those bad choices? Often when you come up with strategies to help defend against this great loss, when you start becoming separated from your soul, you take on all these things that either pull you away or protect you from. So the key with Iboga is that, you see the truth and beauty of who you are and embrace it. You sort of hug that cactus naked like a baby and begin and learn to love it and pull it in. The needles might hurt when they're on the outside, but once you pull them in and become one, you can't have pain. A needle and you are two, but if it's one, so
Makes
the
sense.
whole process of Iboga is unifying through truth and love,
right.
And connecting with your ancestors and finding out who you really are. A lot of times by seeing and understanding who you're not, you could get a better sort of picture of who you are. And so Iboga speaks to the language of you. It's able to translate in memories and experiences and knowledge, knowing. You're on the ledge of knowing. Brings you to the ledge of knowing, where you can look over your life and look at you and get this bigger picture of where you are and where you want to go. And so I think having this fascinating childlike bewilderment,
Right.
is what you can reignite and then become fascinated in who you are again and be comfortable in your own skin. Learn to love yourself again. And by learning to love yourself, that's through forgiving other people and forgiving everyone's forgiving yourself.
Yeah.
Basically the unifying message in most religions and belief systems is, again, in the truth. But with Iboga, all you need is you. We use I've chosen to study with the founders of this great tradition that comes along with Iboga, the Bwiti. The Bwiti are amazing culture and group of people who have learned to use this medicine to its fullest potential through many years and so many millennia, and they have a great understanding of how we work. Not in a way that's given to us from a book, but in a way that's read to us on the language of the souls and ancestors and God himself and the creator and, the real story of like creationism and why we're here and where we come from. Yeah.
That level is so deep where you go to that I don't think most of us even go there. I don't think most of us even go to the ancestors past our great grandparents, But if you really go deeper than that, that's pretty amazing how our DNA is cultured so deep, so deep. We don't even think about that. Wow.
Well, it's infinitely deep.
Infinite, yeah, for sure. For sure.
Yeah. And it's just, that's the thing. We want to discover more and we get so frustrated and we just want to fill our lives up with all this BS and stuff that hurts us because we know we're so much more. We get so frustrated that we can't be. And, you get
Because
persecuted for the truth.
society tells us we can't be. Society has
Society
told us
is society is definitely the narrative is one is,
for sure.
you know.
For sure. So run us through something, because I think a lot of people really, a lot of people have a fear of this medicine, but a lot of people I think have a really interest in this medicine just by our groups. I mean, it's probably one of the most researched and wanted to talk about medicines that's coming to the fur tail here. So explain a typical walkthrough with this medicine for you with one of your clients or with one of your guests. I don't like to call them clients, but guests.
Well, I mean, I've seen, I'm sure in the thousands now of people take Iboga. I was at a conference a couple of weeks ago in Vancouver, and I know it's kind of off the charts to give Iboga, but I gave Iboga to probably about 50 people, off my booth, where I would do like a 5 to 10 minute consultation with them and just let them do a little bit. Some people even break into tears before they even do it, or tears afterwards, or some people get very energetic. Some people go into, where I'd have to sit with them for a bit because it just ignites that flame of understanding that there's more. And that torch of light begins to shed light on some of the things that are inhibiting them or blocking them from being that light. And I think that what I'm getting at here is the biggest thing that it did was it dispelled a lot of fear around the medicine. I think a lot of the fear is from, the darkness that's getting in between and causing a lot of the hurt and the pain and the guilt and the shame and all these negative emotions that and just downright disappointment that people have because you're not living up. And a lot of that is it. And so often it's funny that people become complacent in their protective mechanisms, but they're not really protective. They become complacent in their abusive mechanisms.
Right. So true.
And so, it's like a crystal that is wanting to be broken out of it. I don't know. Like sometimes, I do a lot of analogies, but there's a bit of like, a lot of times I think it's complacency is a word that sort of invites you to be they're comfortable in their situation, even though it's abusive. Right? They become comfortable in their situation, even though it's abusive. And that's like, I think a lot of the fear that comes with Iboga is that it's that mindset that's sitting there going, don't
I say
fucking.
that all the time. I think addiction or an addict is somebody that's uncomfortable and we get so comfortable in our uncomfortability that we love that uncomfortability. It's absolutely crazy as an addict that we sit there and we love that.
They love it, but they would love not being there more. It's just they don't know how to get to that step. It's like they're like swinging on a vine that lost its swing, and they don't have another vine, and they got no swing to get to it.
Right, so they just stay stuck there.
Yeah, so give them a push, give them another vine.
Yep.
That's what we do. So when I will start working with someone, the truth is the push, and the truth is the vine.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha.
And Iboga helps you swing, man.
Yeah.
Right?
I've seen it. I've seen it just on this medicine. I've seen for sure the power of this medicine more so than anything for the catalyst to just change your life. To see kind of what you just said, to see, there's no way to improve yourself until you go through this darkness. I mean, that's the only way. You're never going to do anything except until you go back and get through that darkness. Do you not agree, or am I wrong with saying this statement?
No, let's look at it again a little clearly. So you said there's no way to improve until you want to go through the darkness. I think so. Here's the thing. I think I don't like to limit that. There's always you're completely right. But I think there's some that don't need to do that. Some might just say, I've fucking seen the darkness enough, but they've been through it. So you're still kind of right. You know what I mean? But you see the majority have to, some just can't get enough of it, and they're not here anymore.
Right.
The unfortunate, like I have many people that I've worked with that are not here, no longer here anymore. It's no joke. And I've seen some that I've seen enough.
Yep.
You know what I mean? But definitely there's that aspect because I mean, I guess it's like almost it comes back to the religion, the original sin. There's very few people, like, I mean, I even just had someone just came to me last session, and like, he's done everything. An amazing individual. I mean, he grew up a yogi. He's been to ashrams. He's done every medicine. He's taken the highest doses of the toad. He's doing, and he told me at the end of this that every medicine that he's done and every experience that he's done has led him to this. And we even, got even deeper and dug up even more things in there, like dug up just meaning like, and it's not to say it's better. It's just Iboga is a very powerful medicine, and you want to watch how you use it. And so it likes to go in. It's so much light. It like pushes out all this darkness. And I guess you got to see it as the darkness is getting pushed out in some sense, right? So I wouldn't be a definitive, that everyone has to go through the darkness to see the light. But definitely there's aspects as you're being sculpted spiritually and physically inside to be more adaptable to the light in every way. Like I had this vision of myself on one of my last like journeys where I could see like patterns that I couldn't see. So it enabled me is the unseeable pattern. You know what I mean? Like a lot of times, you have patterns you got to work on. So it's basically accepting the truth as how to get rid of that patterns, and Iboga can help you. But what I found Iboga did with me last time is it helped me to see an unseeable pattern that was happening reactionary. It was a reactive pattern I was having on a natural basis that had been designed through different belief systems and experiences that I grew up with. And I saw it, and it was just, it's basically kind of like an anger pattern. And then I realized, well, that's distracting me from love. It's like, if I want to be in a good, loving position all the time, this pattern that I was reacting with automatically was always distracting me away from love. And I was being distracted from love of who I am. All We Need Is Love by the Beatles, like, this song was ringing out in my head, like, wow, they really had this, right? Kind of sounds cliche and funny, but it doesn't matter. This is what happens. Iboga is a lot of love. And when you see the patterns that distract you from love, so I realized, I looked at a lane, stay in your lane, because this one gentleman was saying to me a lot, stay in your lane, you got to stay in your lane. And I realized like that lane is the love lane.
Isn't that what all the medicines tell us? I mean, I don't know any medicine that doesn't tell us that it's all about the love, but there are some deeper ones that show us that a little harder, and I think that's ayahuasca and Iboga. I think those are two powerful, real heart medicines.
Yeah, definitely. And so, just it basically showed me just stay in the love lane and then work on all these distractions that want to take you out. And those distractions is what the trauma and or the fears that we go through and all these things that are keeping people away from embracing themselves fully, right? A lot of the mindsets people have are very abusive. The way they talk to themselves, and they've built that. They've trained that abusive, negative talk to themselves. The biggest addiction is being addicted to being an asshole or being addicted to negativity.
Absolutely.
And again, addicted is just an uncontrollable behavior. So get rid of it. A lot of the ways, it's all about knowing. So if you know the truth, you can begin to stop talking to yourself that way. Sure. What you want to do is start protecting you. So you start realizing you have this soul to protect. So instead of abusing your soul, you start protecting your soul and loving your soul. So the fear the fear that comes from the use of the medicine is what I'm basically talking about. It's going from, from all these cliche or these complacent ways of being, and it's just breaking out of all these of who you're not really and becoming who you are. So
exactly. So you nailed it. Becoming who you are not. Becoming who you are not and who you are. So perfectly said. So perfectly said, because I think that's all that we want at the end of the day. So let's talk about your retreat down there in Mexico. What it cost, how people get there, what you offer.
The retreat is pretty amazing. We came to the Baja because it's really accessible to Canada for us. It's a very safe area of Mexico. You have Cabo, and then you have this budding medicine community, Todos Santos, which is just about 40 minutes north of Todos Santos. The Tropic of Cancer is here, so you get all this really, a lot of sea life and whales and turtles and birds, migrating birds and different things like that. So we decided to come here and we found this really amazing retreat right on the ocean, and we met the owner, and then it's funny because we're like, well, we got to tell them we're doing Iboga because you can't, use a retreat center when so we wanted to establish this. And I was
Right.
talking to the team and they're like, well, maybe just tell them you're doing a medicine retreat the first time. And I'm like, no, we have to tell him. But he phones me. He's like, yeah, Mark, we've just been through your website extensively and we're going to watch DOSED tonight. And I was like, good. And he loves what we're doing. And his actually, it's almost like right in resonation. He built this, it's a lot of aloes and agave and it's right on the ocean and it works. So right now we have a good setup. We can only house like 5 or 6 people at this particular retreat. We're doing one a month. We're keeping our costs a little similarly low. It's 37 right now. We're at US, and that's an 8-day retreat. One of the days is coming there, and one of the days is going. 6 of the days are full integrative days. Where if you break those 6 days up into 2 3-day chunks, a ceremony, a recovery day, and an integration day, or a ceremony, discovery day, and an integration day. The ceremony days are obvious, preparing and planning for the ceremony, where we work with people a lot, getting them prepared, opening them up to the truth, giving them a lot of hard prep to help so that the impact of the medicine isn't so craterish, to open them up a lot to what they can expect a little bit and how to prepare them so that they can move into this experience with a little more knowledge behind them, instead of this just abrupt experience. So then, the discovery recovery day is like the medicine's very powerful, so it goes all through the night. Into the next day, there's a lot of processing and a lot of taking in and reflecting on the experiences that happened in the night, where we've worked through. We always get people to set a questions so that the medicine is there to help people understand themselves, and a good way to understand things is ask questions, and that's always been one of the key principles of the tradition. Is the medicine was here to ask me questions and I will help give you answers. So we help navigate people through that, sometimes using we call it psychospiritual journey, help navigate their soul through these questions and their ancestrals, or visiting people that might have passed or taught or seen themselves in their infancy, or going and looking and getting a really good understanding of where some of these distractions from love might have happened or been created in their life, and how they've been
Interrupt you there. When you're that deep into your journey, are you able to communicate with the facilitator like yourself? Are you able to talk and communicate? And
you're able to facilitate, you're able to communicate more. Like
okay,
it's a deeper communication. Like, we're built for this. Like, our systems we're super connected between the
yeah,
physical and the spiritual world. We are that connection from the abstract and invisible supernatural layers and supernatural infinite love and space and time and creation and God to us. We are that divine spark as well on the other side, and we get to live in this experience through the senses, the physical. So in the moment, the only true access points to the moment is through all of our senses. And one of those senses is the third eye, sixth
yeah,
sense.
yeah.
So when the medicine highlights all of these senses and we engage, that connection becomes supernatural. And so yeah, we're able to navigate in a deeper level that most of us have experienced, and we experience through dreams and through birth and through life and through spiritual enlightenment, but also right there when the medicine's right in the now. It's a love moment. A love moment.
What a cool, amazing experience that would be. I mean, just knowing about medicines, be beautiful. So, you mentioned a little bit before we end this about microdosing. Microdosing Iboga. Would you recommend it? Would you? let me just ask your opinion. How would you go about this? Because microdosing is becoming pretty prevalent with a lot of these medicines. So let's talk about that. And
I think a lot of people have different opinions and different ideas, and it's not necessarily like I'm the all-seeing eye of this. There's so many good practitioners and people that work with Iboga now, and it's becoming a lot bigger. And a lot of people do it really, really right. We choose to use the Bwiti tradition to pass down knowledge, and some people just decide to allow the plant to be the teacher. But there can also be a lot of when do you go fishing? You know what I mean? When's a good time to go fishing? Or do you get lucky? Or is there a better time at dawn or dusk? Why did a lot of ceremonies in the past get done on full moons? Or why did they get done during eclipse? And so how I see the medicine and how I've been taught, we're very particular how we dose. Dosing is very important to understand someone's tolerance. With Ibogaine, they do it by body weight, but with what I do and what it's by tolerance and understanding someone's mental and physical constituency and fortification or fortitude. And so we're creating an experience that when the medicine comes and opens up, that sacred moment where we can navigate and understand things and be a clear channel to understand the communication that the medicine is giving us about life and who we are. We are life. Everything we want comes from life. Everything we have comes from life, but we are life. And learning to access this creative manifestation power that we all have, it takes clarity. And in that clarity, that setting is important to that clarity. The music to us is important to that clarity. The knowledge is important to that clarity. The truth that you bring forth with teachings, like if you abuse nature, you pay the price. That price is misery. Care to not care. I care about myself so much. I don't care about those negative thoughts that are trying to hurt me anymore. The soul is the goal. So I think microdosing, someone who's really experienced with the medicine and used it a lot and can understand the subtle energy of that spirit speaking to them will use that medicine as a microdose. I don't even like the word microdose. I mean, small dose. I guess microdosing, yes, it can be effective, but it has to be done, has to be right. Like when I was doing it at the conference, that microdose, I knew the people were going to be there at the conference. The chances of having a fight at the conference are extremely high. There's more chance of people breaking up that fight at the conference because it's a plant medicine conference. Everyone's in a high. They're very positive. Yeah, they're talking about positive things. You know what I mean? We were joking. It'd be really hard to break up a fight. I mean, it would be harder to have a fight at this conference than it would be to not have a fight. So anyways, whereas if people start microdosing the medicine, for one, if they have no context of this medicine and they start microdosing, they're going to get mixed up. You don't want to be taking microdoses and driving around in traffic frustrated. You don't want to be taking microdoses I feel anyways, when you're getting your kids ready for school or stuff like that. I mean, you can. I think when it comes to microdosing, there has to be a very clear I guess that word intention comes in because intention really magnifies the whole idea around proper use. Intention. So you have to be really intentional, because I think if you use the medicine out of the wrong context and all of a sudden you find yourself in a situation, it will confuse you more. Yeah. It'll create more anxiety. It'll create more disruption because you're going to be getting these messages through, and then in the physical world is going to be bombarding you with all this. It's definitely a medicine that needs to be respected and listened to. It's about listening. You need to listen to the messages. You need to be able to use it properly. If your senses are getting bombarded by a lot of information, because you have to process it all through your mind. So you want to have a clear moment. It's almost like a sacred moment where it comes in and you use it properly. If you want to microdose, I feel that you should really learn to understand this medicine better so you can, one, recognize what you're microdosing and what are you microdosing for. Some people, they don't know what they're saying. So I want to use this to do that, but they don't know what this is and they don't know what that they want to do.
So true. So very true. So very true. I mean, I guess there's a big difference between microdosing psilocybin and microdosing Iboga. I mean, two different powerful plant medicines, so much subtle and so much more. I don't know because I've never done Iboga. So,
Well, then it's the same with psilocybin. Like, I mean, there's times and a place for psilocybin, you know?
yep.
Right? I
Time
don't
and
think
place for
every,
everything. Right.
yeah. And then what are you using microdosing for? Is it something for health reasons? Maybe microdosing, see, I don't know enough about microdosing psilocybin. Maybe it helps with anxiety. Maybe you're going to be calmer in the moment when you're outside driving in traffic,
Oh,
if it's
yeah.
not inhibiting your abilities. But, you know, with Iboga, like, I mean, definitely should undergone a bigger dose to understand the language of the medicine so that you can actually have communicated with that spirit. We go to Africa and we do initiations, and that's to get initiated into the spiritual world of
Right.
Iboga, to our soul's recognition of the medicine on a bigger level, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying everybody has to go through an initiation no, not everybody has the opportunity to go to Africa for initiation, but if you're initiated a bigger dose with someone who knows what they're doing,
Right.
you can understand the medicine. But then again, I'm not ruling everybody else from microdosing Iboga, but I mean, that's my opinion, is that, you know, there's definitely a level of respect that comes from building a communication, and communication involves listening and
Yeah.
speaking, but it's like, you know, listening and speaking. So there's the communication that needs to be established between you and the medicine, that spirit.
Yeah.
And
Total
that,
understanding.
yeah, you can, like, if you can hear better and you're clear,
Mm-hmm. Then
you
you know
know,
the
and then,
message.
well, that too, but also if you're like confused and you want to take a message, like that's what people do. They take a lot of messages that don't come from who they are. They take messages coming from what they don't know who they want to be. And so, like, you know, that's why drug addicts are really good at finding drugs, because that
Yeah.
mechanism of attraction is still working, but they're
Yes. So
attracting
true.
into who they think they are, their belief system, which is dangerous, not the truth of who they are. So once you understand who you are, then you'll have a better idea where you want to go and who
Right.
you want to be, right? And who you are. So then you start, you know, recognizing, that's all about soul, recognizing the intuition is about recognizing your soul's voice through God, with
Well,
God.
I'll
And
tell you one thing. You definitely have a beautiful understanding of this medicine. If anybody's interested in this medicine, I would highly recommend Mark Howard, his wife Robin, such beautiful souls. Um, in, Beautiful documentary you came up with. It's called Dosed. If anybody wants to really deep dive into this and watch that. And thanks for this conversation today, Mark. Really appreciate you as a friend. Really appreciate what you're doing in this plant medicine community. Much respect for you, my friend. Much respect.
yeah, awesome. Look forward to talking to you more about things, whenever you have questions and we can share. I
Yep,
didn't
we
produce, I
definitely
didn't
will.
produce Dosed, but it was a big part of it. Like mostly as when the guys approached me, say it was called Microdose Me in the beginning. Actually, that was the original name of Dosed. And I
Yep.
said when they phoned me that they're gonna have to change the name to Macrodose Me, and they ended up deciding on Dosed. You know, because obviously microdosing wasn't going to work. So, but
What
thanks a
a
lot for
beautiful,
all you.
no problem. What a beautiful documentary, though. If anybody's interested, it just deep dives into how this works. And the lady that's on that, phenomenal, phenomenal. I hear she's doing great things with her life too. So good
Adrian's
for
doing
you.
great, and we have the other documentary, The Psychedelic Frontier. We
Yeah.
should really get back and have a thing. So he just messaged me. He's 100 days sober today. It took him a little bit after all the medicine and stuff to really get past his addiction troubles, but he's 100 days today, and he's an inspirational character for sure. We should have a talk with him one day.
Let's get them all on. I love you, brother. Let's have a beautiful day, okay?
Yep. Peace. Thanks for doing what you guys do. It's amazing. Keep going.
Thank you. Bye.